What happens when a simple morning show interview turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? Kelly Rowland, the Grammy-winning powerhouse we all know and love, walked onto the set of Today with Jenna and friends expecting a typical promotional chat. Instead, she found herself in the middle of a clash so intense that she had no choice but to walk off, leaving producers scrambling and audiences at home absolutely stunned. Before we get into exactly what was said that made Kelly remove her microphone and leave, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me if you think she was justified in her reaction. Now let's dive into what really went down. The morning started like any other taping at the iconic Studio 1A in Rockefeller Center. Kelly arrived right on time, looking absolutely radiant in a tailored cream blazer and matching wide-leg pants. Her team had confirmed this appearance weeks ago as part of her promotional tours for her new wellness initiative, something she had been pouring her heart and soul into for the past 2 years. The energy backstage was buzzing with the usual pre-show chaos. Producers running around with clipboards, makeup artists doing final touch-ups, and production assistants making sure every camera angle was perfect. Kelly sat in her designated green room, sipping on herbal tea and scrolling through her phone while her publicist went over the talking points one final time. Everything seemed completely normal. The segment was supposed to be light, uplifting, a feel-good conversation about self-care, empowerment, and Kelly's journey into the wellness space. What could possibly go wrong, right? Jenna was already on set, chatting with her co-host for the day, someone we'll call Monica, a lifestyle correspondent who had recently joined the show's rotating panel of friends. Monica had made a name for herself with her bold opinions and sometimes controversial takes on celebrity culture. But the network loved her because she brought an edge that attracted younger viewers. As Kelly walked onto the set during the commercial break, both hosts stood up to greet her with warm smiles and quick hugs. The audience applauded as Kelly settled into the plush cream-colored chair across from Jenna and Monica. Cameras rolled back in from commercial, and Jenna kicked things off with her signature enthusiasm, welcoming Kelly and immediately complimenting her outfit. Kelly thanked her graciously, that million-dollar smile lighting up her face as she crossed her legs and leaned back comfortably. Jenna started with the soft, asking Kelly about her wellness journey and what inspired her to launch this new initiative. Kelly's eyes lit up as she began explaining how the past few years had taught her so much about the importance of mental health, about setting boundaries, about understanding that success means nothing if you're burnt out and depleted. She spoke passionately about wanting to create resources for women, especially women of color, who often feel pressured to be strong all the time without taking care of themselves. The audience was clearly moved, nodding along and occasionally snapping their fingers in agreement. Jenna seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful follow-up questions about specific practices Kelly recommended and how she balanced her demanding career with self-care. For about 7 minutes, everything was going beautifully. Kelly was eloquent, funny, and relatable. This was exactly the kind of interview her team had hoped for. Then Monica decided to chime in. She leaned forward with this knowing smile, the kind that immediately signals a shift in tone, and said something that made Kelly's expression change instantly. Monica asked, with this light laugh in her voice. Whether Kelly thought it was ironic that she was now promoting wellness and balance when her entire career had been defined by being in someone else's shadow, constantly fighting for recognition and validation. The studio went quiet. You could literally feel the temperature drop. Kelly's smile froze on her face, but her eyes went from warm to ice cold in a fraction of a second. Jenna's head snapped toward Monica with this look of confusion and concern, clearly not expecting the conversation to take this turn. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kelly took a slow, deliberate breath before responding. She said, with remarkable composure, considering the disrespect she had just been handed, that her career had been defined by hard work, incredible opportunities, and genuine sisterhood with talented women. She emphasized that being part of something bigger than yourself doesn't mean you're in anyone's shadow. It means you're part of a legacy. Her voice remained steady, but anyone watching could hear the tension underneath every word. She explained that the narrative of competition and hierarchy had been forced onto her and her former group members by the media and by people who couldn't understand that multiple women could shine at the same time. It was a perfect response, gracious but firm, educational but not preachy. Kelly had handled countless interviews over her 20-plus year career, and she knew exactly how to navigate difficult questions without losing her cool. But Monica wasn't done. Instead of moving on or acknowledging Kelly's point, she doubled down. She said, and I quote, "as closely as we can recall from audience members who were there." That's a really diplomatic answer, Kelly, but come on, we're all adults here. Don't you think the constant comparisons affected your self-esteem? Isn't that why you're so focused on wellness now? Because you spent decades feeling like you weren't enough? The audacity. The absolute audacity of essentially psychoanalyzing someone you don't know on live television. Reducing their professional accomplishments and personal growth to some kind of trauma response. Jenna immediately tried to intervene, saying Monica's name with this warning tone and attempting to steer the conversation back to the actual topic at hand. But Monica kept going. She said she was just asking what everyone wanted to know, that Kelly should appreciate someone being real with her instead of just blowing smoke. Kelly's jaw tightened. She uncrossed her legs and sat up straighter, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost all of its earlier warmth. She said, "I came here to talk about a project I'm passionate about, something that could genuinely help people. I didn't come here to be disrespected or to have my career misrepresented by someone who clearly hasn't done their research." She looked directly at Monica when she said that last part, not blinking, not backing down. The energy between them was absolutely electric. Jenna jumped in quickly, apologizing and saying they definitely wanted to hear more about the wellness initiative, practically begging with her eyes for Monica to back off. The producers in the control room were losing their minds. You could see crew members on the side of the set, frantically gesturing to wrap things up. Or cut to commercial, Monica, instead of taking the multiple exits being offered to her, decided to keep pushing. She said something along the lines of, "I think you're being overly sensitive, Kelly. I'm just having a conversation. If you can't handle honest questions, maybe morning television isn't the right place for this interview." And that was it. That was the moment. Kelly's face transformed from controlled frustration to absolute done. She reached down and unclipped her microphone pack from her waistband, the sound of it scratching against the equipment, creating this harsh noise through the studio speakers. Jenna's mouth fell open. Monica suddenly looked less confident, like maybe she was finally realizing she had gone too far. Kelly stood up, still holding her microphone pack, and said in a voice that was quiet but somehow filled the entire studio, "I have spent my entire career handling honest questions from people who actually respect me and respect journalism. What you're doing isn't journalism. It's disrespect disguised as candor, and I don't have to sit here for it." The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay silent. A few people started clapping but stopped when they realized others weren't joining in. Kelly placed her microphone pack on the chair she had just vacated and looked at Jenna, her expression softening just slightly as she said, "I'm sorry, Jenna. I know this isn't what anyone planned." Then she turned and walked off the set, her heels clicking against the floor in the deafening silence. Her publicist immediately jumped up from where she'd been standing off camera and followed Kelly toward the exit. Producers were scrambling. Jenna was stammering, trying to figure out what to say to the cameras, and Monica sat there looking shocked, like she genuinely hadn't expected Kelly to actually leave. The show cut to an unscheduled commercial break, and chaos erupted behind the scenes. Are you still with me? Because trust me, what happened next is even more telling about how this entire situation unfolded. When the show came back from that emergency commercial break, Jenna was sitting there alone at the desk, looking absolutely shell-shocked. Monica had apparently been pulled off set by producers, and you could see Jenna trying to compose herself, shuffling papers that didn't need to be shuffled, and taking a sip of water with a hand that was visibly shaking. She addressed the cameras with this incredibly uncomfortable smile and said something vague about technical difficulties and unexpected circumstances, then quickly transitioned to throwing it over to the weather segment. But everyone watching at home knew exactly what they had just witnessed. Social media was already exploding. People were pulling up clips, dissecting every word, every facial expression, every moment of that exchange. Backstage, the scene was absolute pandemonium. Kelly had gone straight to her green room, where her publicist and manager were already on their phones, dealing with the immediate fallout. According to people who were there that day, Kelly was remarkably calm considering what had just happened. She wasn't yelling or throwing things or having a breakdown. She was sitting on the couch in her green room, that cream blazer now draped over the armrest, just shaking her head in disbelief. Her manager was pacing back and forth, furious, already talking about formal complaints and whether this constituted a breach of the pre-interview agreements they had signed. Her publicist was fielding calls from other media outlets who had somehow already heard about the walk-off and were trying to get statements or book Kelly for their own shows to tell her side of the story. A production coordinator knocked on the green room door. About 10 minutes after Kelly had left the set, she was young, maybe mid-20s, and she looked terrified to be the person tasked with this particular mission. She asked, very politely and very nervously, if Kelly would be willing to come back out to finish the segment. Maybe even just for 2 minutes to wrap things up properly. Kelly's publicist apparently answered before Kelly could, telling the coordinator in no uncertain terms that her client would not be returning to that set. That what happened out there was completely unacceptable, and they would be having serious conversations with network executives about how this interview had been conducted. The coordinator apologized profusely, said she completely understood, and retreated quickly back down the hallway. Meanwhile, on set, Jenna had finished her portion of the show and immediately went to find the producers. She was reportedly livid, demanding to know why Monica had been allowed to ask those questions, why nobody had stopped the interview sooner, why she had been put in that impossible position. Jenna had built her career on being warm, approachable, and professional. She had worked incredibly hard to establish herself as someone celebrities could trust to give them a fair platform. And in less than 10 minutes, Monica had potentially damaged that reputation by turning what should have been a pleasant interview into an ambush. Several staff members who were present during Jenna's conversation with the producers said they had never seen her that angry. She was pointing out that Kelly Rowland was not some random reality star looking for attention. She was a respected artist with decades of credibility, and treating her like tabloid fodder was not only unprofessional but potentially damaging to the show's ability to book quality guests in the future. The executive producer apparently tried to defend Monica's line of questioning by saying it was spontaneous, that Monica was known for asking provocative questions that had made for compelling television. Jenna reportedly cut him off and said compelling television is not the same thing as disrespectful television. And if the network couldn't understand the difference, maybe she needed to reconsider her own role on the show. That got everyone's attention. Jenna had significant leverage. Her segments consistently pulled strong ratings, and she had offers from competing networks that she had turned down out of loyalty. The executive producer backtracked quickly, assuring her that they would review what happened and have conversations about appropriate boundaries for future interviews. Back in Kelly's green room, her team was making the decision to leave the building as quickly as possible. They knew that the longer they stayed, the more chance there was for additional confrontation or for paparazzi. To gather outside to catch Kelly looking upset or angry, Kelly changed out of her interview outfit and into more casual clothes she had brought for after the taping. Jeans and a simple black sweater, she tied her hair up into a ponytail, put on sunglasses even though they were indoors, and prepared to make her exit. Her manager went ahead to bring the car around to a side entrance that was typically used for equipment deliveries, hoping to avoid any cameras or reporters who might have caught wind of what happened. As Kelly and her publicist walked through the backstage corridors toward that side exit, they passed Monica coming from the opposite direction. This part is particularly interesting because multiple crew members witnessed this encounter. Monica apparently stopped when she saw Kelly, and for a second it looked like she might actually apologize. She opened her mouth to say something, but Kelly held up her hand and said, very clearly and very firmly, "Don't. Just don't. I have nothing to say to you right now." Monica stood there looking stunned as Kelly and her publicist walked right past her without another word. One crew member later said that Monica's face went from surprise to defensive to something that almost looked like regret. But by then, Kelly was already gone. The car ride from Rockefeller Center back to Kelly's hotel was tense. Her publicist was already drafting a statement, trying to find the right balance between defending Kelly's decision to walk off while not appearing difficult or unprofessional. It's a delicate line to walk in situations like this. If you come out too aggressively, you risk looking like you can't handle tough questions. If you're too diplomatic, you risk looking weak or like you're allowing the disrespect to stand unchallenged. Kelly was mostly quiet during the ride, staring out the window at the New York streets passing by. occasionally interjecting with specific phrases she wanted included or removed from the draft statement. She was clear that she wanted the statement to focus on respect and professionalism, not on personal feelings or drama. Within hours, the network released their own statement. It was carefully worded corporate speak that essentially said they valued Kelly as a guest, that the interview had taken an unexpected turn, and that they were reviewing their internal processes. It didn't mention Monica by name. It didn't explicitly apologize. It was the kind of statement designed to say something without actually saying anything. The kind of response that makes everyone reading it even more frustrated because it refuses to acknowledge the obvious problem. Social media tore the statement apart immediately. People were demanding accountability, asking why Monica hadn't been named, questioning whether the network actually took the situation seriously, or if they were just trying to sweep it under the rug. Jenna, to her credit, posted something on her personal social media that was much more direct. She didn't throw Monica under the bus explicitly, but she made it very clear that the interview had not gone as planned, that she had tremendous respect for Kelly Rowland, and that she hoped to have the opportunity to welcome Kelly back under better circumstances in the future. It was a classy move that helped salvage her own reputation while subtly distancing herself from what Monica had done. The comments on Jenna's post were overwhelmingly supportive, with people praising her for trying to redirect the interview and for acknowledging that Kelly deserved better. Kelly's official statement came out about 6 hours after the incident. It was measured but firm, exactly what you would expect from someone who had been navigating public life for over 2 decades. She explained that she had agreed to the interview in good faith to discuss a project she cared deeply about. She said that while she understood morning television often included candid conversations, there was a difference between candid and disrespectful. She made it clear that she had no regrets about her decision to leave, that her time and her story were valuable, and that she would always choose to remove herself from situations where she was not being treated with basic professional courtesy. The statement ended with her expressing hope that this situation could serve as a learning opportunity about how we conduct interviews, especially with women and especially with women of color, and how easily the line between tough questions and personal attacks can be crossed. The response to Kelly's statement was overwhelmingly positive. Fans, fellow artists, and even people who weren't particularly familiar with her work came out in support. They praised her for setting boundaries, for not tolerating disrespect, for showing younger women that you don't have to sit there and smile through mistreatment just because you're on television. Other celebrities started sharing their own stories of uncomfortable interview experiences, times when they had felt ambushed or disrespected but had felt pressured to push through because walking off would be seen as unprofessional or difficult. Kelly's decision to leave had apparently opened up a larger conversation about the power dynamics in celebrity interviews and who really gets to set the terms of engagement. Monica remained notably silent. For the first 24 hours after the incident, the network executives knew they had a serious problem on their hands. This wasn't just a minor, uncomfortable moment that would blow over in a day or two. This was a full-blown controversy that was affecting their relationships with talent agencies, publicists, and potentially future guests who were now questioning whether appearing on the show was worth the risk. Within 48 hours of the incident, 3 other celebrities who had been scheduled for upcoming appearances quietly pulled out, with their teams citing scheduling conflicts, but everyone knowing the real reason. The network couldn't afford to become known as the place where guests got ambushed and disrespected. Morning television is built on trust, on that parasocial relationship between hosts and viewers, and on the willingness of celebrities to show up and be vulnerable and personable. If that trust evaporates, the entire format falls apart. A meeting was called with all the key players. Jenna was there, looking exhausted and frustrated. The executive producer was there, along with several other network executives whose titles nobody really understands, but who apparently have significant decision-making power. And Monica was there, sitting in a chair slightly separate from everyone else, her usual confidence noticeably absent. According to sources who were briefed on what happened in that meeting, the conversation was tense from the very beginning. The executives made it clear that the incident had caused real damage, not just to the show's reputation, but to the network's relationships across the entertainment industry. Publicists were calling to express concerns. Agents were asking for guarantees about interview parameters before committing their clients to future appearances. The financial implications alone were significant when you factored in potential lost advertising revenue if big-name guests stopped agreeing to appear. Jenna spoke up during the meeting, reiterating what she had already told producers immediately after the incident. She said that she had been blindsided by Monica's line of questioning, that nothing in the pre-interview discussions had suggested they would be going in that direction, and that she had tried multiple times to redirect the conversation before Kelly made the decision to leave. She emphasized that her ability to do her job effectively depended on guests feeling safe and respected when they came on the show, and that what happened with Kelly had compromised that fundamental trust. Her frustration was evident, and several people in the meeting noted that she seemed genuinely hurt by the whole situation, not just professionally, but personally, as if she took it as a reflection on her own judgment and integrity. Monica finally spoke, and her response was telling. Instead of offering a straightforward apology or acknowledging that her approach had been inappropriate, she defended her questions as legitimate journalism. She argued that Kelly Rowland was a public figure who had been in the industry for decades, that asking about her career trajectory and how it had affected her was fair game, and that if Kelly couldn't handle direct questions, then maybe she shouldn't be doing press. The room reportedly went very quiet after that. One executive apparently asked Monica if she truly believed that psychoanalyzing a guest on live television, making assumptions about their mental state and personal struggles based on media narratives, constituted legitimate journalism. Monica doubled down, saying that audiences were tired of softball interviews and that her approach brought an authenticity that younger viewers appreciated. That's when one of the senior executives, a woman who had been in television for over 30 years, spoke up. She said something that really cut through all the deflection and justification. She told Monica that there was a difference between asking challenging questions and being needlessly cruel, between journalistic integrity and personal attacks disguised as curiosity. She pointed out that some of the most respected interviewers in the history of television, people who had built legendary careers on asking tough questions, had managed to do so while still treating their subjects with basic human dignity. She said that what happened with Kelly wasn't edgy or authentic, it was simply disrespectful, and that disrespect should never be confused with bravery or honesty. The executive made it clear that the network's brand was built on being a welcoming space in people's mornings, and that there was no room for approaches that made guests feel attacked or ambushed. The decision about Monica's future with the show wasn't made in that meeting, at least not officially, but everyone who was there said the writing was on the wall. The executives wanted to see how the rest of the week played out, whether the story would die down or continue to gain momentum, and how Monica handled herself publicly if she decided to address the situation. They were also waiting to see if Kelly or her team took any further action, whether that meant legal complaints, formal statements to industry organizations, or interviews where she discussed the incident in more detail. The network needed to understand the full scope of the damage before deciding on consequences. Monica's public statement finally came 3 days after the incident. It was posted on her social media accounts late in the evening, a time chosen presumably because it would get less immediate attention than a morning or afternoon post. The statement was not what anyone expected. Instead of apologizing or taking responsibility, Monica framed herself as a victim of cancel culture and She said that she had asked questions that made people uncomfortable because that's what real journalism does, that she stood by her approach, and that she was disappointed that a respected artist like Kelly Rowland had chosen to shut down a conversation rather than engage with difficult topics. She ended the statement by saying she hoped this incident wouldn't discourage other interviewers from asking challenging questions because audiences deserved substance over superficiality. The response to Monica's statement was swift and overwhelmingly negative. Even people who had initially been on the fence about the situation, wondering if maybe Kelly had been too sensitive or if the whole thing was being blown out of proportion, turned against Monica after reading her defiant non-apology. Industry professionals, other journalists, television hosts, they all weighed in to say that Monica had fundamentally misunderstood what had happened. Asking challenging questions is one thing, they said. But what Monica had done was make unfounded assumptions about Kelly's psychological state and motivations, reducing a multifaceted career to a simplistic and insulting narrative. That's not journalism, multiple commentators pointed out. That's just being mean under the guise of truth-telling. Jenna distanced herself from Monica's statement almost immediately. She posted a simple response that said the views expressed by her colleague did not represent her own understanding of what happened or how interviews should be conducted. It was professional but pointed, making it clear that Jenna did not co-sign Monica's interpretation of events or her refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing. Other members of the show's rotating panel of friends also started speaking up, some privately to producers and some publicly on social media, expressing discomfort with being associated with the incident and with Monica's handling of the aftermath. The network made their decision 2 days after Monica's statement went public. They announced that Monica would no longer be a correspondent on the show, framing it as a mutual decision to part ways so that Monica could pursue other opportunities that were better aligned with her journalistic approach. Everyone understood it was a firing dressed up in corporate language. Monica's segments were immediately scrubbed from promotional materials. Her bio was removed from the show's website, and producers started reaching out to other potential correspondents to fill the gap in their rotation. It was a clear message that the network was choosing their reputation and their relationship with the broader entertainment community over one controversial personality. Kelly never publicly commented on Monica's firing. Her team released a brief statement saying that they appreciated the network taking the situation seriously and hoped that the show would continue to be a platform where guests felt respected and valued. It was gracious and measured, exactly the kind of response that reinforced why Kelly had been right to walk off in the first place. She had set a boundary, refused to tolerate disrespect, and had done so without needing to tear anyone down or engage in public feuds. She had simply removed herself from a bad situation and let her professionalism speak for itself. The incident had ripple effects throughout the industry. Several morning shows and talk shows implemented new protocols for interview preparation, making sure that hosts and correspondents were on the same page about the tone and direction of conversations before guests arrived. Publicists started including more specific language in appearance, agreements about the types of questions that would be off-limits or that would require guest approval. There was a broader conversation happening in green rooms and production, meetings about the difference between holding celebrities accountable and simply being rude to them, about how to balance entertainment value with basic respect, about the responsibility that comes with having a platform. So, what do you think? Was Kelly Rowland justified in walking off that set? Or should she have stayed and continued to engage with questions she found disrespectful? Drop your thoughts.